I've never been comfortable on long drives since that trip. Even now, years later, I still check my windows before I go to sleep in a car. Let me tell you what happened. It was supposed to be a simple family road trip. My aunts and I were driving from Portland, Oregon, all the way up to the Northwest Territories in Canada to visit my grandparents. Nearly 3,000 miles of highway stretched ahead of us. Looking back, I should have known that something that long, that isolated, had potential for things to go wrong. The thing about driving through the Pacific Northwest and up into Canada is that once you get past the major cities, you're really on your own. We're talking about highways that cut through endless forests and mountain passes where you might not see another car for an hour or more. Gas stations become these precious little oases that you have to plan for. Miss one, and you could be in serious trouble. To keep myself entertained during the endless stretches of road, I'd picked up this book about unsolved mysteries, true crime stuff, murders, disappearances, cold cases that never got solved. I know it sounds morbid, but there was something fascinating about reading these stories while watching the dark forests roll past my window. My aunts thought I was weird for it, but it helped pass the time. We'd been driving for nearly 2 days straight when we decided we needed to stop for the night. We were somewhere in British Columbia, still had a long way to go, and everyone was exhausted. My aunt who was driving spotted a campground just off the highway. It wasn't anything fancy, just a clearing in the woods with some fire pits and a small bathroom building. There were maybe 2 or 3 other vehicles scattered around the area, but it was pretty empty for that time of year. We didn't bother setting up a tent or anything. We were too tired for that. The plan was just to sleep in the van and get back on the road at first light. My aunts took the back seats, and I got the front passenger seat. I reclined it as far back as it would go and wrapped myself in a blanket. It wasn't the most comfortable setup, but after hours of sitting upright on the highway, lying down at any angle felt like luxury. The campground was quiet. Too quiet, if I'm being honest. No crickets, no night birds, just the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. I remember lying there, staring up at the van's ceiling, my mind still full of the murder stories I'd been reading. That's when I started hearing things. Footsteps, soft but distinct, the crunch of gravel and pine needles under someone's weight. They were close, really close. Right outside the van, I held my breath and listened. The steps would move, pause, move again. Slow, deliberate, like someone was pacing around our vehicle. I wanted to sit up and look, but something kept me frozen. That primal instinct that tells you to stay still when you're being hunted. I tried to convince myself it was just another camper walking to the bathroom, maybe someone getting something from their car. But the footsteps kept circling. They'd pass by my window, fade toward the back of the van, then come around again, over and over. My aunts were asleep in the back. I could hear one of them snoring softly. I didn't want to wake them and feel stupid if it turned out to be nothing. So I just lay there, listening to those footsteps circle our van in the darkness, my heart hammering so hard I thought whoever was out there might hear it. Eventually the footsteps stopped. I waited, straining my ears for any sound. Nothing. After what felt like forever, exhaustion finally pulled me under, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. When I woke up, early morning light was just starting to filter through the trees. That grey pre-dawn light that makes everything look washed out and eerie. My neck was stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. I rubbed my eyes and started to stretch when something caught my attention. On my window, just inches from where my head had been resting all night, was a face print, not handprints. A face. You could see everything. The outline of a forehead, the smudge of a nose, the oval shapes where eyes had been pressed against the glass, even the fog marks where breath had condensed on the window. Someone had stood there and pressed their entire face against that window, looking in at me while I slept. My stomach dropped. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stared at that print, my mind racing back to those footsteps I'd heard in the night. Those slow circling footsteps, They hadn't just been walking around our van. They'd been looking in. I thought about how I must have looked from outside, reclined in that seat, wrapped in my blanket. How vulnerable we all were. 3 women sleeping in an unlocked van in the middle of nowhere. How easy it would have been for someone to open that door. The print was right where my face had been. Whoever it was had been standing there watching me sleep. Maybe for minutes, maybe for hours. Close enough that only a thin pane of glass separated us. I finally found my voice and woke up my aunts. When I showed them the print, their faces went pale. One of them tried to rationalize it, saying maybe it was from a curious kid earlier in the day. But we all knew that wasn't true. The condensation marks were fresh, and I'd heard those footsteps in the night. We got out of there fast, didn't even use the bathroom, just started the van and drove. As we pulled away, I looked back at the campground. The other vehicles that had been there the night before were gone. The place looked completely deserted. I wondered if they'd had a visitor too. I wondered if they'd left in the middle of the night. We drove straight through after that. Even when we were exhausted, even when we needed to stop. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in a vehicle again on that trip. Every time we stopped for gas, I checked the windows, looking for prints, looking for signs that someone had been watching. I never did sleep for the rest of that drive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face print on the window. Every time the van made a noise, I thought I heard footsteps. The worst part, we never found out who it was. Just some stranger in the night who decided to press their face against our window and watch us sleep. Someone who could have done anything they wanted but chose to just watch. Sometimes I think that's worse than knowing, because now whenever I'm alone at night, whenever I hear an unexpected sound, a part of me wonders if they're out there. Still watching, still waiting, and I always check my windows before I sleep. I don't drive through Mexico at night anymore. Not after what happened when I was 8 years old. Some experiences change you, make you see danger where others see nothing. This is mine. Growing up, road trips to Mexico were just part of life. Every summer, almost every New Year, my family would load up the car with suitcases, snacks, and pillows, then make the long drive from North Texas down to visit relatives. It was routine, boring even. My siblings and I would complain about the hours stuck in the back seat, fighting over who got the good pillow or whose turn it was to pick the music. We had the timing down to a science. Leave around 6 in the evening, drive through the night, arrive at our destination by morning. My parents preferred it that way. Less traffic, cooler temperatures, and US kids would sleep through most of the journey. Or at least, that was the plan. This particular trip started like all the others. We said goodbye to our house, piled into our old sedan with the luggage stacked so high in the back that you could barely see out the rear window. My dad drove, my mom in the passenger seat with her purse and a thermos of coffee. Me and my 2 siblings stretched out in the back, claiming our territories, settling in for the long haul. The drive to the border was uneventful. We played the usual car games, listened to music, watched the sun sink below the horizon until everything outside turned dark. Crossing into Mexico around 2 in the morning was normal for us. We'd done it dozens of times before, but this time felt different. Once you cross the border and get past Laredo, the landscape changes fast. The highway cuts straight through the Chihuahuan desert, and at night it's like driving through nothing, pure emptiness. No streetlights, no buildings, no other signs of civilization. Just your headlights carving a small tunnel through the darkness and the endless black desert on either side. The stars were incredible that night, though. Thousands of them, scattered across the sky like someone had thrown diamonds against black velvet. I remember looking up at them through the window, trying to spot constellations. The silhouettes of cacti stood like twisted sentinels in the distance, barely visible against the night sky. I wasn't really sleeping, just lying there in that half-awake state you get on long car rides. My siblings had actually dozed off, their breathing steady and soft. The hum of the engine and the roll of tires on asphalt usually put me out, but something kept me aware. Maybe it was the emptiness outside. Maybe it was something else. That's when I heard my mother's voice, low and uncertain. "Miguel, that car behind us. It's been behind us since we left Laredo." I opened my eyes but didn't move. My dad glanced at the rearview mirror, then shrugged. "A lot of cars use this road. He's probably going to Reynosa or another city." His voice was casual, unconcerned. Just another driver making the same journey we were. Nothing to worry about, but my mom didn't look away from her side mirror. I could see her reflection in the window, the way she kept watching. That's when I turned around to look. Through the gaps in our luggage I could make out headlights, 2 bright points following us through the darkness. At first it didn't seem strange. Like my dad said, this was a major highway. Other people traveled it too. My siblings woke up around then, probably sensing the tension. Without saying anything, we all started watching the car through the narrow spaces between our bags and suitcases. It became a game at first, something to pass the time. We'd count how long the car stayed behind us, make up stories about where they were going, but the game got old fast. "He's getting closer." My mother's voice had an edge to it now. We all turned to look. She was right. The car that had been maintaining a respectful distance was now moving up behind us. Steadily, deliberately. "He's too close, Miguel." The headlights grew brighter, filling our car with harsh white light. My dad's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, but he didn't say anything. Didn't speed up or slow down. Just kept driving at the same steady pace. The car pressed closer, and closer, until those headlights were so bright I had to squint. We were on a completely empty highway in the middle of the desert, and this car was practically touching our bumper. My heart started hammering. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just another traveler going the same direction. Something was wrong. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. The car would fall back sometimes, giving us just enough space to breathe. We'd start to relax, thinking maybe my dad had been right. Maybe it was nothing. Then those headlights would surge forward again, blinding and aggressive, pressing so close I thought they might hit us. It felt intentional, like whoever was driving knew exactly how scared we were and was enjoying it. None of us talked. My siblings and I just watched through the gaps in the luggage, our faces probably pale in the glow of those headlights. My mother kept her eyes locked on the side mirror. My dad just drove, his jaw clenched tight. We were trapped. Stopping on this empty highway felt dangerous. Speeding up might provoke whoever was behind us. So we just kept going, with that car toying with us like a cat with a mouse. Then my mother saw something up ahead. "Pull over, right in front of the police." "Pull over right now, Miguel." There on the side of the road was a police cruiser, just sitting there in the darkness. I don't know if it was routine patrol or if the officer was taking a break, but my mum didn't hesitate. My dad swerved onto the shoulder and pulled up directly in front of the police car. The car behind us didn't stop. It just drove past, its red taillights disappearing down the highway. The policeman got out, probably confused about why we'd parked right in front of him. He came to my dad's window, and my mother immediately started explaining. The car, how long it had followed us, how close it got, how it kept backing off and coming back over and over. I expected him to dismiss it, to tell us we were overreacting. He didn't. His face got serious. He told us about the highway robberies, about criminals who targeted families traveling at night. They'd follow you, intimidate you, force you to stop. Then they'd rob you, take your car, sometimes worse. He said it happened more than people knew. Then he offered to follow us, to escort us for a while until we were safely away from this area. The relief was overwhelming. We pulled back onto the highway with the police cruiser behind us, its presence like a shield. The tension in the car finally broke. My mother let out a long breath. My dad's shoulders relaxed. We were safe. For about 10 minutes we felt safe. Then we saw it, up ahead, pulled over on the side of the road. The car just sitting there in the darkness, waiting. As we passed, I could see it in the shadows. Empty highway stretching in both directions. No reason to be stopped there. No mechanical trouble. Just waiting for us. The police cruiser was behind us, so the car didn't move. It just sat there as we drove past, and I couldn't see inside. Couldn't see who was driving. But I felt them watching us. We drove for another hour with the policeman behind us before he flashed his lights, waved, and turned off at an exit. By then the sky was starting to lighten. John was coming. We never saw that car again, but I think about it sometimes, about what would have happened if my mother hadn't seen that police cruiser, about that car waiting on the side of the road, ready to follow us again once we were alone, about what they wanted. I don't drive through Mexico at night anymore. This happened a few years ago when I was on a road trip with a friend. We'd been driving for hours, just the two of us, trying to make good time. We were young and maybe a little reckless with our planning, thinking we'd just figure out where to stop when we got tired. That's the kind of mistake you only make once. Around 10 o'clock I noticed the gas gauge creeping toward empty. We were somewhere in the middle of nowhere, one of those stretches of highway where towns are few and far between. The kind of area where you see more trees than houses, where the darkness outside your headlights feels thick and endless. We need gas, I told my friend. And we should probably find a place to stay soon, she nodded, already looking tired. We'd been taking turns with the music, chatting to stay alert, but the monotony of the road was getting to both of us. I'm usually careful about where I stop. My mom always taught me to trust my instincts, especially when traveling. Look for well-lit places. Look for other people around. Don't stop anywhere that feels off. Good advice that I'd always followed. So when we started seeing signs for gas stations, I passed the first couple. One looked too isolated, just a lonely building with a single flickering light. Another seemed abandoned, dark windows and an empty parking lot. I kept driving, looking for something that felt right. Then I saw it. A brightly lit gas station, the kind that almost glows against the night sky. Clean, modern, and busy, or at least it looked that way. There were cars parked at several pumps, vehicles scattered around the lot. The fluorescent lights were harsh and bright, the kind that make you squint, but also make you feel safe because you can see everything. This looks good, I said, pulling off the highway. My friend sat up, looking relieved. Thank God. I really need to use the bathroom. As I pulled into the station, I noticed there was only one pump available right in the center of all the others. The rest were occupied by cars. It seemed weird that they'd all be at the pumps, but not actually pumping gas, but I figured maybe people were inside paying or grabbing snacks. It was a busy station after all. I maneuvered the car into the open spot right in the middle, put it in park, turned off the engine. The night air hit me as I opened the door. It was cooler than I expected, with that particular stillness that comes late at night. I could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead, that electrical hum that's somehow both comforting and eerie. I walked around to the gas tank and started unscrewing the cap. The metal was cool under my fingers. I remember being focused on that simple task, thinking about how much longer we had to drive, whether we'd make it to a decent hotel. That's when I heard the shout. "Don't fucking move!" My head snapped up. There was a man standing about 20 feet away, and he had a gun. An actual gun pointed in my direction. Behind him, I could see other people emerging from the shadows around the gas pumps. 3, maybe 4 others. My brain tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Then I looked at the cars around us. Really looked at them. They were all empty. Every single one. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't a busy gas station. Those cars weren't customers. They were props. This was a setup, a trap. And we'd driven right into the center of it. Get on the ground now. The man with the gun was moving closer, his voice aggressive and sharp. Tell your friend to get out of the car. Get on the fucking ground. I could see my friend through the windshield. She was frozen, her face pale in the harsh lights, her eyes wide with terror. She wasn't moving. Couldn't move. The man kept shouting, threats about what they'd do to us. Violent sexual threats that made my stomach turn. Stuff I won't repeat. The kind of things that make you understand that you're not just being robbed, you're in real danger. The other people were moving now too, forming a loose circle around my car. My mind was racing. We were surrounded, trapped. If I got on the ground like he wanted, that was it. Once we were down, once we gave up control, we weren't walking away from this. The gas cap was still in my hand. Without thinking, I shoved it into my pocket. "Let me talk to her," I called out, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "She's panicking. Let me get her to calm down and come out." The man hesitated. Maybe he thought I was cooperating. Maybe he didn't see me as a threat. Maybe he just wanted to get this over with. Fine, get her out, but make it quick. I walked around to the driver's side, moving slowly, carefully. I opened the door and slid into the seat. My friend was shaking, her breathing fast and shallow. "We're going to die," she whispered. "Oh God, we're going to—" "Look at me," I said quietly, reaching for the keys that I'd left in the ignition. "We're not getting out. When I start this car, hold on." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. The man with the gun started shouting again, realizing what was happening. I threw the car into reverse and slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched backward. I heard a yell. One of his accomplices was right behind us. We missed him by inches. Or maybe we didn't. I don't know, and I didn't stop to check. I cranked the wheel, spinning us around. Through the windshield, I saw the man with the gun. Just for a second, our eyes met, and the look on his face was almost funny. Complete shock, like he couldn't believe we were actually leaving. Like this wasn't how it was supposed to go. He looked stupid standing there, gun in hand, watching his easy victims escape. Then we were back on the highway, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. My friend was crying. I might have been crying too. We drove for 30 miles before we stopped again. The gas light had been on for the last 10, the car running on nothing but fumes and fear. When we finally pulled into another station, this one actually busy with real people, I could barely get out of the car. My legs felt like water. We didn't stop again after that. Not for the rest of the night. We drove straight through to our destination, both of us too wired and terrified to even think about sleeping. Every gas station we passed, every car that got too close behind us sent my heart racing. I reported it when we finally got where we were going. Gave the police the location, described what happened. I don't know if they ever caught those people. I don't know how many others might have fallen for that trap before or after us, but I know we got lucky. Lucky that my friend froze instead of getting out. Lucky that I kept the keys in the ignition. Lucky that I had those few seconds to think. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen to get on the ground. If I'd cooperated like he wanted. I'm glad I don't know. Now I'm paranoid about gas stations at night. I check the cars. I look for real people, not just vehicles. I trust my instincts, and I never ever pull into the center pump. Before I moved to Australia, I made a stupid decision. I watched Wolf Creek. If you don't know it, it's this horror film about a psycho killer who hunts tourists in the outback. The kind of movie that gets under your skin because it's based on real events. Real murders. Real people who drove into the middle of nowhere and never came back. My friends thought it was hilarious how much that film messed with me. They'd bring it up constantly, doing impressions of the killer's accent, saying things like, "Oh, he'll get you," whenever we talked about traveling. I'd laugh it off. But inside I meant it when I said I'd never go. Anywhere near Wolf Creek, not the actual place? Never. Then I ended up planning a road trip across Australia. We were driving from Brisbane on the east coast all the way to Broome on the west coast. It's one of those massive Australian distances that looks deceptively simple on a map until you realize you're crossing an entire continent. We had 72 hours to make it. 2 cars packed with 11 people total, all Europeans, all thinking this would be some kind of adventure. None of us really understood what we were getting into. The Australian outback isn't like driving through Europe or America. There's nothing out there. For hours you see red dirt, scrubby bushes, the occasional road train hauling cargo, and that's it. No towns, no services. Just endless flat landscape under a sky so huge it makes you feel like an insect. By the second day we were all exhausted. Nobody had really slept because sleeping in a packed car in that heat is basically impossible. You'd doze off for a few minutes, wake up drenched in sweat, shift position and try again. The air conditioning only did so much with that many bodies crammed together. Somewhere in the middle of the second day, the two cars got separated. I don't even remember how it happened. One car stopped for something, the other kept going, and suddenly our group of 11 was split. There were maybe 4 or 5 of us in our car, and we had no idea how far behind or ahead the others were. That's when we noticed the fuel gauge. We were running on empty in the middle of absolutely nowhere. The kind of nowhere where the next gas station might be 200 kilometers away. The panic set in pretty quick. We started doing math, calculating if we could make it. Rationing the fuel by slowing down, windows up to reduce drag. We didn't make it. The engine sputtered and died on this long, straight stretch of highway. Nothing around us but red dirt and dying light. We coasted to the shoulder and sat there for a minute in the terrible silence, trying to figure out what to do. That's when someone checked the map and realized where we were, 15 miles from Wolf Creek. I genuinely thought someone was messing with me at first. It had to be a joke. But they showed me the map. Wolf Creek Crater. Right there. 15 miles away, the place from the film. The place I'd sworn I'd never go near. We managed to limp the car to a gas station about a mile down the road, but it was closed. Completely dark. One of those remote stations that's only open a few hours a day because nobody's out here. A handwritten sign on the door said it wouldn't open until morning. So we were stuck, stranded in the dark, 15 miles from Wolf Creek with no fuel and no way to contact the other car. No phone signal out there, obviously. We were on our own. The sun went down fast. That's something about the outback. There's no gradual dusk. It's day, then it's night, and the darkness is thick and absolute. The temperature dropped from scorching to just hot, maybe 30 degrees Celsius, which sounds comfortable until you're sitting in a car with 4 other people and no air conditioning. I was in the middle of the back seat, wedged between 2 friends. The heat was oppressive, suffocating. I could feel sweat running down my back, sticking my shirt to the seat. The windows were down, but there was no breeze, just still air that felt like breathing through a blanket. I started to panic. Not about Wolf Creek or killers or anything external. Just the physical sensation of being trapped. The claustrophobia of that middle seat, people pressed against me on both sides. The roof of the car too close, the air too thick. My chest got tight. My breathing got shallow and fast. I had to get out. I opened the door and practically fell out of the car, gasping for air. My friends asked if I was okay. I said I just needed space, needed to cool down. They understood, or at least they didn't argue. There was a bench outside the gas station, one of those metal ones that probably burns your legs off during the day. At night, it was just warm. I lay down on it, staring up at the stars. And God, the stars out there are incredible, more than you can imagine, if you've only seen them from cities. The Milky Way was a bright smear across the sky, so many stars they blurred together. For about half an hour I actually felt calm. The panic subsided. My breathing evened out. I could hear my friends talking quietly in the car, the occasional laugh. Normal sounds that made me feel safe. Then I heard an engine, a vehicle coming down the highway, headlights cutting through the darkness. I sat up, thinking maybe it was our other car finally catching up, or maybe someone who could help us with fuel. The vehicle turned into the gas station. A pickup truck. It pulled up and parked maybe 20 feet from my bench. Then the lights cut out. Just clicked off and everything went dark again. I waited for someone to get out. A door to open. A voice. Something, nothing. The truck just sat there, engine off, lights off. I could see the shape of it, the silhouette, but I couldn't see inside the cab. Couldn't see if anyone was there. How many people, what they were doing. The windows were dark, reflective. My heart started hammering, because the truck in Wolf Creek, the one the killer drives, it was almost exactly like this. An old pickup truck, same era, same style. And it would pull up in isolated places and just sit there while he watched his victims. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just someone else stranded, waiting for the gas station to open. Maybe they were sleeping. Maybe they didn't even see me on the bench. But why turn the lights off? Why not get out? Why just sit there in the darkness watching? I stayed frozen on that bench for maybe 5 minutes. It felt like an hour. The truck didn't move. Nobody got out. I kept staring at it, trying to see inside the cab, but the darkness and the angle made it impossible. My friends were in the car about 50 feet away. I could run back. I should run back, but part of me didn't want to move, didn't want to draw attention. Like if I stayed perfectly still, maybe whoever was in that truck would forget I was there. Then I thought about the film again, about the tourists who made the wrong choice, who trusted the wrong person, who stayed outside when they should have hidden. I stood up slowly, casually, like I was just stretching, walked back toward our car, trying not to look rushed, trying not to look scared. The whole time I could feel eyes on me from that truck. Whether they were really there or just in my imagination, I don't know. But I felt watched. I got back in the car and told my friends about the truck. They looked over at it. One of them said maybe we should go ask if they had spare fuel. I said absolutely not. We were staying in the car with the doors locked until morning. They agreed. We spent the rest of the night taking turns keeping watch, making sure that truck didn't move closer. It never did. Just sat there in the darkness until the sky started getting light. When the gas station opened in the morning, the truck was gone. No idea when it left. None of us heard it start up or drive away. It was just there one moment and gone the next. We fueled up and got the hell out of there as fast as we could. I still don't know who was in that truck. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was exactly what I feared. But I know I made the right choice getting back in the car that night. Some coincidences aren't worth testing. This happened a few years ago, when 3 of my friends and I were driving back to Sydney from Melbourne. There were 3 of us girls and 1 guy, and we decided to make the drive in one shot rather than breaking it up over 2 days. It's about 9 hours if you push it, and we were young and stupid enough to think that sounded like a good idea. By the time we were about 5 hours in, we were all getting restless. The highways between Melbourne and Sydney are long and monotonous. Endless stretches of road cutting through farmland and bush, the occasional small town, but mostly just emptiness. We'd been rotating drivers, blasting music to stay awake, living off service station coffee and petrol station snacks. It was getting late. Not quite dark yet, but that grey period where the sun is setting and everything starts to lose its colour. We were somewhere in the middle of nowhere. That stretch where you're not really close to anything. When us girls all realised we desperately needed a bathroom break. The problem with that drive is that proper rest stops are few and far between. You've got your big service stations in the major towns, but between them it's just these small random rest areas. Usually just a toilet block, maybe a picnic table or 2 and a parking area. No lights, no attendants, no other facilities. Just basic infrastructure in the middle of nothing. We spotted a sign for a rest stop coming up and pulled off. It was one of those places you'd drive right past without thinking twice about it. A small gravel parking area, a single brick toilet block that had seen better days, and a couple of weathered picnic tables. There was no one else around. No other cars, just us and the dying light. The toilet block looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Red brick, small windows near the roof, that institutional look that all public bathrooms seem to have. The women's and men's entrances were on opposite sides of the building. Our guy friend stayed by the car while the 3 of us headed into the women's side. Inside was exactly what you'd expect. Harsh fluorescent lighting that flickered slightly. That particular smell of industrial cleaning products mixed with something less pleasant, white tiles on the walls, and 3 stalls. It was cold in there, much colder than outside, and our voices echoed off the hard surfaces. We all went into our separate stalls. I remember hearing my friends chatting about something, their voices bouncing around the bathroom. The usual girl talk. The door to my stall didn't lock properly and I had to hold it closed. I remember being annoyed by that, thinking about how sketchy these random rest stops were. When we finished, we all gathered at the sinks. My friends started fixing their makeup in the mirror, touching up their lipstick, adjusting their hair. I washed my hands and was ready to go, but they were taking their time chatting away about the rest of the drive, about what we'd do when we got back to Sydney. I've thought about this part so many times since, about how casual we were, how we just stood there talking and laughing in that empty bathroom, completely unaware. After a few minutes, I told them I was going to have a smoke and headed outside. Our guy friend was leaning against the car and I joined him, lighting up and standing in front of the vehicle. I was facing the entrance to the women's toilets, just making small talk, not really paying attention to anything. My friends came out a minute or two later. They didn't walk straight to the car, though. They sat down at one of the picnic tables, still chatting, waiting for me to finish my cigarette. I was maybe halfway through it when I saw movement at the bathroom entrance. A man walked out from the women's toilets. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with a thick grey beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in months. His clothes were dirty, stained, the kind of dirt that builds up over time. He wasn't in a hurry, just walked out casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. My brain took a second to process what I was seeing. A man, coming out of the women's bathroom, the same bathroom we'd all just been in, where my friends had stood fixing their makeup, completely vulnerable. The worst part was realizing we'd never seen him, never heard him. We'd been in there talking, laughing, using the stalls, completely unaware that we weren't alone. How long had he been in there? Was he already in there when we arrived? Was he in one of the stalls, just listening, watching through the gap in the door? I felt my stomach drop. I looked at my friends sitting at the picnic table. They were facing away from the bathrooms, still talking, oblivious. They hadn't seen him come out. "We need to go," I said to my guy friend, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. "Right now." He looked at me, confused. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I was staring at the man. He'd stopped just outside the bathroom entrance and was looking in our direction. Not moving, just standing there looking. "Girls, let's go," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Come on, we need to leave." Something in my tone must have registered because they both stood up immediately and started walking toward the car. I flicked my half-finished cigarette away and opened the car door. That's when I told them. That man just came out of the women's bathroom. He was in there with us. I saw the color drain from their faces as they understood. We all piled into the car, doors slamming, locks clicking. My friend who was driving didn't ask questions. He just started the engine and we took off. As we were pulling out of the rest stop, I turned to look back. The man was walking, not toward the car park or toward the road. He was heading into the woods behind the rest stop, into the bush where the grass was as tall as he was, just walking into the darkness like he belonged there. It was such a strange image, this figure disappearing into overgrown scrub, swallowed by the vegetation. No car, no reason to be out there. Just a man vanishing into the wilderness as the light faded. We drove in silence for a while after that. Eventually, someone said we should call the police. But what would we tell them? A man came out of a women's bathroom at a rest stop. He didn't do anything to us. Didn't threaten us. Didn't even approach us. He was just there. But we all knew it was wrong. Deeply wrong. Everything about it. The fact that he'd been in there with us without us knowing. The way he just stood there after, watching us. The way he disappeared into the bush like he'd done it before. Like he knew exactly where he was going. I've never stopped at that rest stop again. I barely stop at any remote rest stops anymore. And when I do, I make sure I'm not alone. I check every stall before using one. I keep my visits quick, because now I know. You can be in danger, and not even realize it until it's almost too late. And sometimes the scariest part isn't what actually happened. It's thinking about what could have happened if things had gone just slightly differently. If I'd gone in there alone. If we'd lingered longer. If he decided to make a move instead of just watching. We got lucky that day. But I never want to find out what we got lucky avoiding. There are some things you see as a kid that you just never talk about. Not because you don't want to, but because saying it out loud makes it more real. This is one of those things. When I was young, my family took a road trip to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. If you've never been, I genuinely recommend it. Beautiful place, geysers, wildlife, stunning landscapes. But getting there from our home in California was no joke. About 17 hours of driving, and that's if you don't stop much. We made the trip in our Yukon XL, which was basically the largest, most comfortable road trip SUV you can imagine. 3 rows of seats, tons of space for luggage, and enough room that me and my brothers could spread out in the back without killing each other. My dad loved that truck, said it was built for adventures like this. The drive took us several days of on and off traveling. We'd wake up early, drive for 6 or 8 hours, stop at some little roadside diner for food, keep going until everyone was exhausted, then find a motel for the night. It was a good system. But on this particular trip, we'd fallen behind schedule. I don't remember why exactly. Maybe we slept in one morning or spent too long at some attraction. Whatever the reason, my dad was getting antsy about reaching Yellowstone on time. On the 3rd night, after we'd stopped for dinner at some forgettable chain restaurant, my dad made a decision. He was going to drive through the night, get us there faster, make up for lost time. Me and my brothers thought it sounded like a terrible idea, but we were kids. We didn't get a vote. We settled into our usual positions in the back, pulled out our pillows and sweaters to use as blankets, and tried to get comfortable. The gentle motion of the truck on the highway, the white noise of the engine, the darkness outside, it all works like a sedative when you're young. We were asleep within an hour. I have no idea how long my dad drove before he stopped. Could have been 2 hours, could have been 5. All I know is that at some point, he must have realized he was too tired to keep going safely. He pulled off the highway and found a place to park for a few hours. When I woke up, it was the middle of the night. At first, I didn't know what had woken me. I was in this weird half-conscious state, aware that something was different, but not quite alert enough to figure out what. I shifted in my seat, trying to find a more comfortable position, and that's when I realized we weren't moving. The engine was off. Complete silence except for the sound of my dad snoring softly in the front seat and my brother's steady breathing in the seats around me. I opened my eyes fully and looked around. We were parked in darkness. Total, complete darkness. No streetlights, no other cars, no ambient light from buildings or anything. Just pure black pressing against the windows. I could barely make out the silhouettes of my family members in their seats. I tried to fall back asleep, but it wasn't happening. My neck was stiff from the awkward angle I'd been sleeping at. My leg had gone numb. And now that I was awake, I was aware of how quiet and isolated everything felt. There's something unnerving about waking up in an unfamiliar place in the middle of the night, especially when you're a kid. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling of the truck, listening to the silence. Boredom started creeping in. I thought about waking my dad to ask where we were, but he looked so tired, slumped over the steering wheel, that I couldn't bring myself to do it. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see where we were. I pressed my face against the window and looked out, but it was useless. Pitch black. I couldn't see anything beyond maybe a foot from the glass. Then I remembered my flashlight. I was that kid who always overpacked. My bag was stuffed with things. I probably didn't need extra clothes, books, snacks, and a couple of flashlights. So my dad used to joke that I was preparing for the apocalypse, but right then I was grateful for it. Moving carefully so I wouldn't wake anyone, I reached between the seats and found my backpack. The zipper sounded impossibly loud in the silence, each tooth catching and releasing like a tiny gunshot. I paused after every inch, making sure no one stirred. Finally, I got it open enough to reach inside and pull out a small plastic yellow flashlight. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those cheap ones you get at a hardware store, but it worked. I held it up to the window and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a small circle of the world outside. At first, all I could see were trees. We were in some kind of rest stop surrounded by forest, tall trees with thick trunks, underbrush, scattered bushes. Pretty normal stuff. I moved the flashlight slowly, scanning the tree line, looking for anything interesting. Maybe a deer or some other animal. Maybe a sign that would tell me what state we were even in. That's when I saw it. Between two trees, maybe 30 or 40 feet from the car, there was a shape. A dark silhouette that stood out against the lighter bark of the trees behind it. At first glance it looked human, the rough shape of a person standing there, but it was completely still, not moving at all. I kept the light on it, watching, waiting for it to move or reveal itself as a bush or a stump or something harmless. But it just stood there. The longer I stared, the more human it looked. Head, shoulders, body, like someone standing in the woods in the middle of the night. Just there. I tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was probably just a weirdly shaped bush or a shadow playing tricks on me. People don't just stand in the woods next to random rest stops in the middle of the night. That doesn't make sense. I was about to turn off the flashlight and try to go back to sleep when the shape moved. It turned. A smooth, deliberate 90-degree rotation. Then it stepped behind one of the trees and disappeared from view. My heart stopped. Every muscle in my body locked up. That wasn't a bush. That wasn't a shadow. That was a person. A person who had been standing in the woods watching our truck. And when I shined a light on them, they moved. They hid. I clicked the flashlight off so fast I nearly dropped it. My hands were shaking. I pulled my sweater up over my head like a blanket and curled up in my seat, squeezing my eyes shut. I covered my ears with my hands, trying to block out any sound that might come from outside. My mind was racing. Who was that? What were they doing out there? Were they watching us? Were they going to come to the truck? Did they see me see them? I wanted to wake my dad, to scream, to tell someone, but I couldn't move. I was completely paralyzed by fear, frozen in this weird semi-fetal position, with my sweater over my head and the flashlight clutched in my hand like a weapon. The adrenaline coursing through me made sleep impossible. I just sat there for what felt like hours, every nerve in my body on high alert, listening for footsteps or tapping on windows or door handles turning. Every tiny sound, the truck settling, the wind in the trees, my dad shifting in his sleep, sent fresh waves of panic through me. I stayed like that until I saw light starting to filter through my sweater. Dawn. The sun was coming up. I heard my dad wake up, stretch, start the engine. We pulled back onto the highway, and I finally felt safe enough to relax. I fell asleep within minutes of us getting back on the road. When I woke up, it was afternoon, and we were getting close to Yellowstone. My brothers were talking about what they wanted to see first. My mum was looking at a map. Everything felt normal again. I never told anybody about what I saw. Not then, not during the trip, not after. I thought about it constantly, but every time I tried to form the words, they got stuck in my throat. Maybe I was worried they wouldn't believe me. Maybe I was worried they would. Even now, I'm not sure what I saw that night, but I know it was real. I know someone was standing in those woods watching our truck. And I know they didn't want to be seen. Sometimes I wonder if they're still out there at that rest stop, waiting in the darkness for the next family to pull off the road and fall asleep. I hope not, but I'll never stop at an unlit rest stop in the middle of the woods again. I was driving home from a family reunion, one of those obligatory gatherings where you catch up with relatives you barely know and eat too much potato salad. It had been a good time, actually, but I couldn't stay the night like most of my family did. I had work the next morning, so around 9 I said my goodbyes and headed out. The drive home was about 2 hours, mostly on back roads through rural areas. You know the kind. Narrow 2-lane roads with dense bushes and trees pressing in on both sides, the type you see in every horror movie right before something terrible happens. During the day, they're probably pretty. At night, with only your headlights cutting through the darkness, they feel suffocating. I'd been driving for about 45 minutes when it hit me. That sudden, overwhelming exhaustion that comes out of nowhere. 1 minute I was fine. Windows down, music playing, and the next minute my eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I kept blinking hard, shaking my head, turning the music up louder. Nothing helped. I knew I wasn't going to make it home like this. The smart thing would have been to find a gas station or a rest area, somewhere well lit with other people around. But this stretch of road didn't have anything like that. Just trees and darkness and the occasional house set way back from the road. I kept driving, hoping I'd come across something, anywhere safe to pull over. But nothing appeared. Meanwhile, I was getting more and more tired, to the point where I was genuinely worried about falling asleep at the wheel. So I made a decision that I knew was stupid, even as I was doing it. I pulled over onto the side of the road, onto the grass behind some bushes. The idea was to hide my car a bit from passing traffic, make it less visible. The road wasn't completely empty. I'd been passing another car every few minutes, but it was quiet enough that pulling over felt inherently unsafe. I turned off the engine and locked the doors. Checked the time, 11:22. I told myself I'd just rest for 20 minutes, half an hour tops, just enough to take the edge off the exhaustion. Then I'd be fine to finish the drive. I reclined my seat back and closed my eyes. Sleep came immediately, heavy and deep. I don't know how long I was out before the sound woke me up. A scratching noise. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Metal on metal. My eyes snapped open and I lay there frozen, trying to figure out what I was hearing and where it was coming from. The clock on the dashboard read 11:50. I'd only been asleep for about half an hour. The scratching continued for a few more seconds, then stopped. I held my breath, listening. Silence, just the sound of wind moving through the trees and the occasional car passing by on the road. I told myself it was probably just an animal, a raccoon or possum checking out the car. They do that sometimes, right? Nothing to worry about. I was still exhausted, my body heavy with sleep. The logical part of my brain was screaming at me to start the car and get out of there, but the tired part won. I closed my eyes again and let myself drift off. The second time I woke up, the scratching was back. I checked the clock. 12:40. Almost an hour had passed since the first time. This time the sound didn't stop. It just kept going, scratch, 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 steady and purposeful. And it was definitely coming from the back of my car. That's when the fear really set in. An animal wouldn't leave and then come back an hour later. An animal wouldn't keep scratching in that deliberate pattern. My mind immediately went to that urban legend, the one about the hook-handed killer who scratches couples' cars when they're parked in lovers' lanes. In the story, the guy gets out to investigate and ends up dead, and the girl finds his body hanging over the car. I know it's just a story, but in that moment, alone on a dark road with something scratching my car, it felt very real. I needed to see what was out there. I kept as still as possible and slowly moved my eyes to the rearview mirror. The angle wasn't great, but I could just barely see the area behind my car. At first I saw nothing. Then, for just a split second, I caught a glimpse of movement. Someone running away from my car and disappearing into the tree line. That was enough for me. I started the car, threw it into drive, and pulled back onto the road. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't care about being tired anymore. I just wanted to get the hell away from there. I accelerated, watching my speed creep up as I put distance between myself and that spot. There was a bend in the road up ahead, maybe 100 yards away. I took it faster than I should have, and that's when I saw the car. It was pulled off to the side of the road, similar to how I'd been parked. But the driver's side door was wide open. The interior light was on, casting a pale yellow glow. The car was running. I could see exhaust coming from the tailpipe, but there was nobody inside. I slowed down without really meaning to, my foot easing off the gas as I tried to process what I was seeing. The car looked abandoned, but it was running with the door open like someone had just stepped out a second ago. Where was the driver? I was still staring at the empty car, trying to make sense of it, when I glanced in my rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty, dark, nothing there. Then, suddenly, a man came sprinting around the bend. He was running full speed, arms pumping, and he was headed straight toward me. When he saw my car, he started screaming, "Hey, you, stop!" I watched in the mirror as he got closer, still running, still shouting, "Get the fuck out of your car." Now, every instinct I had was screaming danger. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. The scratching, the empty car with the door open, this man chasing me down and demanding I get out of my vehicle. I slammed my foot on the gas. My car lurched forward, and I didn't look back. I just drove, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, eyes locked on the road ahead. I half expected to see his car come racing up behind me, but it never did. I didn't slow down until I hit the highway 20 minutes later. Even then, I kept checking my mirrors every few seconds, expecting to see headlights closing in. When I finally pulled into my driveway at home, I sat in the car for a few minutes, my hands shaking, trying to calm down enough to go inside. Then I remembered the scratching sound. I got out and walked to the back of my car. There were fresh scratches on my bumper, long deliberate gouges in the paint. Someone had used something sharp, a key maybe, or a knife to scratch my car while I slept. I never reported it to the police. What would I say? That someone scratched my car and then I saw a guy running after me? That I ran away from someone who might have needed help? But I don't think he needed help. I think he was working with whoever scratched my car. I think they were hunting together, one person targeting cars parked on the side of the road while the other waited up ahead. I think when I woke up and drove away, I interrupted whatever they had planned for me. I still don't know what that plan was, and I'm grateful I never found out. Now I don't care how tired I am. If I need to pull over, I find a gas station or a rest stop with lights and people. I never park on the side of empty roads, and if I see a car pulled over with the door open and no one inside, I drive past without slowing down. Because some urban legends exist for a reason. They're warnings. And that night, I almost became another story someone tells to scare their friends, almost.